A powerful morning to everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it's really a disgrace. It's a disgrace what's happening right now, so let's get straight to the point. Look, there's a video with an elderly woman, the mother of a fallen soldier who refused to accept an award from Zelensky, saying that the authorities are just a disgrace.
A Ukrainian mother who refused her son's posthumous award, the Golden Cross.
So this is one of the highest awards, and the woman refused it. For her, it's not an honor. For her, it's a shame to accept an order, a medal, I don't know, maybe it's an order from a representative of the Ukrainian government as a sign of protest against the government.
I don't have the moral right to accept this award from such a government.
Can you imagine how far things have gone if even a woman who is undoubtedly proud of her son, who loved him deeply when they tried to present her with the award, says something like that? That is just how far these people in power have pushed people. Something we'll talk about more in a moment.
For lies and for corruption, our boys are paying with their blood and their lives.
A woman here just said it perfectly, with their lives and blood. And I have no moral right, no right to accept this award. It's your right, so I refused.
With their lives and blood. And I have no moral right to take it. I have no right to take this.
Pass it on.
Please, I heard when the president thanked me, and the supreme commander thanked me, and the commander thanked me for raising my son. At the cemetery, I heard it, and today I want them to hear my voice.
In this video, all we can do is sympathize with the woman. Of course, we regret her loss. And at the same time, I want to highlight the first thing, her integrity, the fact that she didn't accept the medal. Second, it's the fact that she wasn't afraid to say what is now considered in Ukraine to be betrayal, separatism, anything like that, pro-Russian narratives and all the rest. And third, it's an excellent speech. This woman speaks excellently. She speaks Ukrainian in contrast to all those top commanders. And moreover, she expresses her thoughts coherently, especially in such a situation. She doesn't speak like all those representatives saying things like, oh, here's a girl, here's this and that, somehow this way and so on. She expresses her thoughts extremely precisely and I think very clearly. Next, well, Zelensky again, yes, had a falling out with Poland. Go on.
Little digression.
Now, plus, after amending some agreements, now Poland isn't giving what it was supposed to give. Zelensky is outraged, but Poland says, sorry. In short, instead of giving Ukraine the MiG-29 fighter jets they promised, they're sending them for scrap, meaning for recycling. Why? Well, you could say that it was all just talk, promises were made, and in the end nothing happened. Some might say, because of the Ukrainians, since Zelensky promised in exchange for those very MiGs, even though they're outdated, yes, but still, they're weapons, drone technology, all sorts of technologies for creating drones, control, training, as I understand it, the Poles. And then they started dragging their feet, beating around the bush, and basically they were stalling on everything else too. Poland got tired of it, especially given the ongoing conflict with Ukraine, and the Poles said, sorry, instead of MiGs you'll get nothing, and basically they turned around and staged a sort of demonstration like that too. At the same time, Zelensky spent a long time in Ireland, well, not that long, just a day, but he had some very important talks. I didn't find any mention in any media about what Zelensky actually agreed on with Ireland, or why he went there during such heavy shelling. For example, Mayor Klitschko of Kyiv, no matter what people think of him, was in his hometown at that time. And Zelensky was in Ireland at that time. From there he was saying, be careful Ukrainians, there might be shelling, be careful, watch the sky, take cover. Now he suddenly flew in, visited everything he could, and even what he shouldn't have, as I already mentioned in my morning video. There's even a video where his security was pushing a journalist away. Now he is already stating that Russia will receive a fair response from Ukraine for today's strike on Kyiv, and it's like this every time, just like that. He bombs something because if planes are flying, we'll bomb. Then he goes abroad, Russia responds. Zelensky comes back and starts threatening Russia again, insulting Putin and doing other things that in general are available to him. And this has been going on for, well, half a year or maybe even more, probably a year. Now, even Ukrainian journalists with patriotic views have started writing, asking why you're in Ireland, why you're not with the people. 52,000 people spent the night at the metro station, not in their warm beds, not at their dakas, at the metro station, some almost on the rails. At this time, the powerful leader is making deals about who knows what, who knows where, and most importantly, for who knows what reason. What good does any of this do? What will Ukrainians see after he flew to Ireland? They won't see anything because it was a trip just for the sake of a trip. Now, Zelensky has stated that Ukraine will definitely deliver a retaliatory strike against Russia. Then he also said the following: Putin is losing this war, that's what's happening. He clearly, well, that is, Putin understands that he can intimidate people and simply destroy the civilian population with missile strikes. Putin is afraid of chaos, he needs muscle, but he doesn't have any muscle on the battlefield. It should be understood that escalation may happen soon. And again, on one hand he says that Russia has no muscle, but on the other hand he says that escalation will happen. So how can it happen if, by his own account, Russia has no means to continue the war and other operations? But there's just no logic here. No matter how many videos with them I've watched, here one thing just contradicts another, with rare exceptions. And this article is not in fact not an exception. We are for a just world, a just end to the war, and while there is no peace yet, we are for just responses. Russia will face consequences for today's strike on Kyiv. It's pointless. And again, then the Russian Federation will strike Kyiv and there will be more victims, and again Zelensky will shake his fist and say, look at this. For him, and not just me, but many bloggers have said before that it's extremely important to keep constant escalation and maintain the war in its current state. Because you can stay in office for many more months, if not years. For example, right now he tried to make a deal with Zaluzhny, former general and commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces. Like, don't go there, come here instead, meaning don't become president and we'll give you any position you want. But Zaluzhny refused. And now Zelensky, well, maybe not in a panic, but still, he's thinking about how to keep all of this under control. And naturally, with the help of mutual blows, all of this is quite possible. And as a result of the strikes, well, a lot of people died, but I already talked about that in the previous video. At the same time, this topic continues to unfold and is actively discussed in the media about how Zelensky announced a 40-day deadline for negotiations with Putin. Moreover, before this, it wasn't called a 40-day deadline for negotiations, it was called something like a 40-day something else. It was a program or a project aimed at influencing Russia. There was no talk about negotiations. Now suddenly negotiations have appeared in the program. And Zelensky stated that now we have a chance, and it came when we saw how many air defense systems we are destroying. This was also confirmed by this Yevgeny Karas, well, basically another character who films his videos near Kyiv. And Zelensky declares, and his representatives declare, that now we will turn Crimea into an island. And immediately analysts say that this is impossible. Crimea is not isolated yet. Those involved now say the operation will take another month, if possible. They're calling it a defense plan instead of a victory. And it's just necessary to complicate the work of the Crimean group. They have just a week's fuel reserves and other issues, but for now this doesn't determine the outcome. Again, all of this contradicts the previous strong speeches by the president and all his henchmen who said that it would all be over in a day or two. I'm not even talking about having barbecues in Crimea or coffee in Yalta. I'm talking specifically about the recent statements that say that's it, there's already a fuel catastrophe, there's nothing left, Russia is done for. Now they're all going to surrender. Apparently Putin himself will come to Kyiv and surrender. Zelensky keeps telling this story. He says the following: only the island of Moscow, not Crimea, will force Putin to stop the war. All his stories about knowing Crimea, about being loved there and needing it, are lies. Just like with the east of our country, he only knows it from his officers' reports. Putin needs to sell a big victory to his society in order to strengthen support inside Russia. He has elections in September. He needs a united society that will support him and a united Russia. Putin needs to show his muscles. And again about these muscles, the lack of success and everything else. Allegedly, Zelensky seems to have some huge successes. And what else are these successes? Well, his representative met with Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, and it's unclear how it ended, it's unclear why it was held. Also, negotiations for the sake of negotiations, but there is still some support. Powder in the powder flasks, berries in the buttocks, and politicians in the politicians together with the fighters and other powerful comrades. Ukraine is also demanding from NATO that someone join somewhere, either into NATO or NATO into Ukraine, but just so there is at least some appearance. This has been going on for a very long time. We're being told that Kyiv is seeking recognition from NATO of Ukraine's new role in the security architecture. Apparently, this is that very porcupine. It's being promoted now. Ukraine is striving for its status as a country contributing to the security of the alliance to be reflected in the declaration of the NATO summit in Ankara. And then it goes on to say that everything is powerful again, everything is great. Here I immediately want to show you two videos. One of them is actually in support of Zelensky's very policy. Moreover, with such a strong dose that it's better to use a full biochemical protection suit here, instead of my power goggles here, but I'll use them. This is our comrade from the food industry, who used to sell chebureks in various stalls. And now he's the director of crisis management decisions, the director of the Crisis Management Decision Center. His name is Zavgorodny. Well, let's listen.
Moscow residents may storm the Kremlin or do something else. The Kremlin or something else.
According to him, the residents of Moscow are already going to storm the Kremlin. That's how much these guys are spreading all sorts of nonsense to the masses. They don't even try to think with their own words anymore. What are you talking about? Which Muscovites are going to storm the Kremlin? What's going on?
At the same time, for example, the military police in Moscow could stage a coup if, let's say, some unrest starts there. They could bring troops into Moscow.
What troops? What do you mean, what troops? So he means that some Muscovites will go to the Kremlin. At that time, some military will enter Moscow and stage a military coup. But there's a well-known meme. What nonsense are you telling me? Well, you have to maintain some sense of sanity when you're making speeches. Sitting down, I get it, the couch is comfortable and you can say all sorts of things, well, all sorts, but still you have to be at least a somewhat reasonable person. But it seems this doesn't apply to this character.
50,000 people and 50,000 people who can do a lot of other things, and Putin's Federal Protective Service won't help him here. And this creates the conditions for a real civil war right inside Russia.
Yes, basically, for Taras Zavgorodny, there's already a civil war in Russia, but at the same time, there are much more reasonable people who claim the exact opposite. They claim that these strikes on Russia bring nothing to Ukraine except additional suffering. I haven't shown this expert in a long time, thanks to whoever sent the video featuring him. This is Vigorinsky. And he very often analyzes the situation very sensibly. I like him because his way of thinking is clear and easy to follow. That is, even if he might be wrong about something, at least you understand the reasoning that led to a particular thought. When this guy, Zavgorodny, starts talking, it only leaves you feeling surprised and nothing else. I mean, there are some patriotic words here and they're put together into some barely coherent phrases. And that's it, the whole speech is put together, well, you could say, in a really messy way, to put it mildly. With Vigorinsky, it's the opposite. He has clear speech and he has an analytical mind. Let's listen to what he has to say. Okay, right here from about this point here.
Including in occupied Crimea and in logistics, the more accommodating Russia's position, and Putin's in particular, will become in the negotiation process.
Journalists are asking him, well, they're asking here, do you think that if Crimea is bombed and Moscow is bombed and so on, will the Russian authorities become more compliant? Vigorinsky's reaction is clear, so we can turn it off. Goodbye, it was a pleasure. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel and watch the next video. Well, all right.
A European sits here, creating and thinking. On what basis do we expect, the implementation of his assumptions in life? On the basis of changes in social attitudes?
He's talking about a column in The Economist, I think, where a European journalist wrote all this, saying that now, together with Europe, Degobraz and Iholki and Zelensky, who is with these Iholki, yes, we will win. In Russia...
Yes, in that world of public sentiment. Today I listened to Venediktov's broadcast. Nobody here trusts him, but overall he more or less tries to keep track of the statistics. So he cites sociological data. He says that after the start of the crisis, the strikes on Russian territory...
Venediktov, if I remember right, was Dozh's former editor-in-chief.
He shifted these dynamics that way and finished successfully with an extra 5%.
So, while Zelensky and his associates claim that the longer you put pressure on Russia, like bombing, attacking Crimea and doing all that, the more people will be against it. To rise up and start, like that Zavgorodny was saying, a civil war and march on the Kremlin and to Sakhalin and wherever else, Zelensky says the opposite. According to the same statistics from Venediktov, the willingness of Russians to resist this has increased by 5. All of this. So it's statistics from a person you can't call an ultra-patriot or some kind of nationalist or anything like that. No, absolutely a person who is criticized for being a liberal.
That is public sentiment.
We are talking about, and there is logic in this, absolutely.
No, that's the logic we have. That's the logic applied to us, right? Well, yes. This is when we say that they're hitting us. You won't break us, not at all. We will strike back. But here we apply this to ourselves, and to the enemy we say, no, there we'll get him, and he'll just, in short, bend.
Very, very good and logical, and really, I mean, you can only applaud here because it's rare now for a person on Ukrainian television to be able to express any reasonable thoughts. I understand that most people are afraid, and not even for their own lives, but so they don't lose their cushy job, their, let's say, profitable property, or their Cheburek stand, so it doesn't get shut down. That's why they often say things they probably don't believe. If circumstances shift, they'll quickly change their stance. Vegerinsky, however, isn't afraid. I have respect in general for this person, a real expert. And he states that, look, when it comes to Ukrainians, you say that the more Russia does this and that, attacks, bombs and all that, the stronger the Ukrainians become, the more determined we are, the more ready we are to go to the front and fight. But when it comes to the enemy, meaning Russia, for some reason the reasoning is different, that the more you bomb Russia, the more you strike there. The Crimeans, those who have already suffered so much since 2014. I never cease to be amazed at how the Ukrainian authorities even plan to return Crimea and the Crimeans. Mainly if they've been turned against Ukraine for God knows how long. It seems like there was just this bloodless revolution or whatever it was called. Polite people, those little green men, call them whatever you want almost the very next day. Oh, how about we cut off water to the people of Crimea right in the middle of summer, or let's cut off their electricity, and in general, like Zelensky himself or people like him, we'll just fly over and bomb them. Well, they didn't bomb back then, but still, they did a lot of bad things like that. And even those people who were either for Ukraine or neutral, they turned their backs on Ukraine just like the hut in the fairy tale turns its back to the forest when the main character comes to it. And now the exact same thing is happening, absolutely the same, maybe even worse, because now there are all sorts of bombings of cities, things are falling even on the beach. Well, in general, and Vegerinsky is right here, he says that people will, on the contrary, become more and more resilient to external influences. Of course, people want the war to end, but nevertheless, he says, come on, are you kidding after all this? Do you think we would just give up, surrender? No, that won't happen. And this very determination has increased by 5. I don't know how true this is, but nevertheless, it seems logical. You know, statistics are like the law. However you twist it, that's how it turns out. So, statistics are checked. Well, we can find some other data as well. But, as Vegerinsky says, Venediktov tries to keep track of the statistics he talks about. And if he says so, then most likely he got it from a reliable source. But as for that very journalist with the icons who keeps churning out one victorious column after another, well, that's something to think about. But we have another expert as well. We have expert Shah here, together with this Zagorodny. These are the two most powerful ones. He uses, look, a filter. I even recognize it. It's his. That's a beauty filter when your face looks smooth. I rarely use it, only when I wake up in the morning and have big bags under my eyes. But right now everything is so smoothed out on his face that I'm surprised his nose even stands out. And by the way, it's actually because this filter is used that the nose stands out even more. Look, the stubble seems smoothed out and everything. Well, anyway, he applies this filter to himself. I don't know why.
Latvian Deputy Minister Andris Kulbergs believes that it's not yet time for Europe to negotiate with Russia and instead suggests demonstrating strength to Moscow. Do you share this view? If so, to what extent should we demonstrate strength to Moscow before we say, okay, this is enough?
The US expert made me think, and now he's going to share his thoughts.
A ceasefire from both sides, but what will it achieve? Will we gain anything? Have we lost our battlefield advantage? Russia will exploit this and only benefit.
They won't take advantage of it. They will take advantage of it.
The issue of negotiations is kind of subjective during discussions. Right now, they are not showing any significant modern successes. There is no global progress or breakthrough. They are suffering serious losses.
Well, about the breakthrough, again, I recently had a video about this, and there is actually a very serious problem for the Ukrainian armed forces at the front, especially in Donbass. That's why the US military expert continues to be that same expert, but not a military one, rather just an expert from the US. Well, that's how things are, dear viewers. Be sure to write what you think about this, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel, whether you just want to talk to the author or tell him you're wrong right now, and I'll explain why. Goodbye, everyone.
I will think 100 times whether it's worth keeping any parts of the interview, how it will end, what consequences there will be for those you talk about, and the consequences for those who will perceive this information. Our rules are about providing information that will, first of all, be useful to everyone, and secondly, we still won't overly highlight our problems.